If I asked you to name a company that makes noise reduction products, I'm willing to bet one of the first companies that would come to your mind is iZotope. iZotope has been a mainstay in the post-production industry for quite some time now, and traditionally we have thought of their tools as being mostly relevant for dialogue editing. And while it's probably true that dialogue editors and dialogue mixers are the most prolific users of RX, if you stick around and watch this video, I'm going to show you 5 ways in which iZotope can be perfectly applied within the realm of sound effects cleanup as well as creative sound design uses. What's up everybody? My name is Matt Yoakum and welcome to MYSOUND. If you've watched my videos before, I want to say welcome back, and if this is your first time to the channel, I just want to say welcome. This is a channel focused on sound design and post-production and helping you to achieve better results and to have fun while doing it. If you like the videos that I make, be sure to subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out, and without further ado, I'm just going to get to the subject matter of the day. So like I was saying at the beginning of the video, RX is an incredible set of tools for dialogue editing and noise reduction, but it is also an invaluable set of tools within the realm of sound effects recording, cleanup, and sound design. But we don't often talk about RX within the sound design context, so that's my goal for the video today, is to help arm you with a few cool new tips and tricks, as well as some practical skill sets to aid you in whatever you need to accomplish. I will just say this briefly. When I was first getting started out, and even still today, when I'm working on smaller projects or indie projects or commercials, I tend to wear a lot of hats, and so I will not just only do sound effects and sound design, but I will also take on the role of doing dialogue editing and dialogue cleanup and mixing and so on and so forth. And one of the great things about having a general skill set across these different areas is that so many of the skills that you pick up in different niches, those skills cross-pollinate to the other areas super effectively and make you a stronger overall artist and technician. So without further ado, let's jump into Pro Tools, and I'm going to show you how you can use iZotope in your sound effects workflows. Okay, so here we are in Pro Tools, and it's just worth pointing out here that I'm going to be using RX Connect for most of my stuff here today. You do have the option of using the standalone plugin audio suite versions, but I like to do things within the RX editor itself. Okay, so tip number 1, how to use RX for cleaning up your sound effects recordings. Now, this is where RX excels because it is first and foremost a noise reduction software, and that's exactly the sort of tools that we need when we are cleaning up our sound effects recordings. So this right here is a recording, an ambience recording that I did when I was up in Toronto this winter for the holidays. And this is a small clip of the full-length recording that I did. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit send, and it is going to pull open the RX editor for us. Now let me take just a really brief moment to explain this interface for those of you who may be unfamiliar. RX is basically Photoshop for sound. It represents your audio in an image. And this image that you see here is known as an FFT, or a fast Fourier transform. Basically, all you need to understand about that is that it is a way of mathematically displaying audio the way that we're doing here. Now, our left to right x-axis equals time. So you can see there's a time code bar down here at the bottom. And then from bottom to top, our y-axis, this represents frequency. And you can see there's a scale here on the right as well. It goes from 0 up to 20K and beyond. And then last but not least, we have our brightness, which is amplitude. It goes all the way from black through blue and then up through orange and then to yellow as the brightest. So the brighter the color, the louder it is. So let's just listen to a brief selection of this clip. Okay, that gives us the idea. So it's an outdoor recording, there's some birds, we hear this plane going in the background. And then right here, as it went over this line, there's this snap in the left side where something happened with the left capsule of the microphone. Could have been moisture or the temperature. It was extremely cold in Toronto during this recording. So one of the things that I want to point out here is that we do not have to throw away our recordings just because there is a mistake in them. When I was getting started, I used to think that if there were any errors at all in my audio, that it wasn't usable and I had to trash that and start over. And I want to point out in this tutorial that that is exactly what RX saves us from. So I'm just going to show you a couple of my favorite noise reduction tools here that I use constantly for cleaning up my sound effects. So first things first, let's tackle the most obvious issue in this recording, which is this loud snap that we have here in the left channel. Now, if I were just editing this in Pro Tools, I would just cut this out and create a crossfade, but I don't want to lose the rhythm of this bird, and it's pretty easy to clean up. And sorry, before I get too much further into it, I just want to point out there are several different tools and ways of selecting your audio within RX. We have this vertical time selection tool here, and then we have a frequency selection tool here, which allows you to select vertical selections. And then we have this sort of freeform selection tool, which allows you to make sort of square or rectangular custom shapes on your timeline. There's a bunch of other tools here as well. These are the ones that I use most often. I find that between these three tools, I can select most things that I need. I also reach for the paintbrush tool from time to time. And there are shortcuts associated with flipping between these as well. And it would behoove you to get comfortable with the shortcuts in iZotope as well, because it really speeds up the workflow. I'll just tell you these three real quick. The time selection is T, which makes sense. The frequency selection tool is F, and the rectangular selection tool is R. So it's just T, R, and F. I will switch through these all the time, and now you'll have them in your muscle memory too. Okay, so the first module I might try here is declick and see if this does it. We can just hit render, and that's pretty amazing. It actually got it, looks like all the way gone. So let's take a look. It's pretty good. I see this tiny little spike down here, so I'm just going to reduce that with gain. Gain is also an incredibly useful, simple tool here in RX because I can make a little selection like this and just gain it down a few times. I also have shortcuts assigned for gain. There are default shortcuts for like declick and gain and all of that, so you can get familiar with those as well. But yeah, that click is now gone. I have to eliminate that section of time in order to save my recording in crossfade. Okay, the next really obvious issue here is this plane. Now, as you can see, all of these little vertical lines down here are that airplane. And what happens is that they are not static. So even if I wanted to EQ them out, I would have to make a bunch of EQ notches manually, and I probably still wouldn't be able to clean it out cleanly. And doing that amount of EQ with those narrow bands creates all kinds of other issues. But then to make matters worse, as the plane is slowly Dopplering towards us, it is raising in pitch, changing those frequencies so that they're in a different place here than over here. So I would have to dynamically move that EQ, and this is basically a next to impossible task. So thankfully, the dehum module in RX has this adaptive mode. This does exactly what it sounds like. It will adapt to where the hum in your recording is. Now it has these sliders. This is normally default up here to 24K, and this is down here at 20. And what I will do is if I have hum that I can see, there's also this sort of additional sort of straight hum here that I probably won't be able to hear, but I'd probably want to knock it out of the recording anyways. So I can go up to about 1.5K, bring that slider down into this vicinity. And what that's going to do is basically just save a bunch of processing time, so it's not trying to run a bunch of calculations where I don't really have any issues up here. I have one really thin line here, but I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to set this here and hit render. I leave these other things near default. I set the bands to 256. I'm going to hit render. and like magic, we can watch that plane disappear. Now let's see. What I will do here is that I will undo halfway through playing this little clip so that we can hear the plane come back and hear the difference. That's pretty amazing. There's still a little bit of high frequency information here, sort of more noise based and not so much tonal based because of the propeller. It sounds like this is a prop plane, but that's okay. It did a pretty good job of removing it. If there are areas, let's say like this, I can see there's sort of this little spike here, and I don't necessarily want to drill down on it with gain. There is another tool, and this is perhaps the one I use the most within iZotope, called Spectral Repair. Spectral Repair is extremely versatile and can get me out of a ton of tight spots when it comes to cleaning up my sound effects or dialogue for that matter. Now, I'm going to explain how this works, but it's a little bit easier to show it working and then to explain it. And once you wrap your mind around it, it's pretty straightforward actually. So what you do is you make a selection of the thing that you don't want in your audio anymore. And the nice part about Spectral Repair is you don't have to be super precise. I don't have to like carve this out exactly, although I certainly could. You can make fairly general selections as long as you're not selecting something that you do want to keep in there. And then you have a few choices to make here. And actually, the easiest thing to understand are these three selections down here: horizontal, vertical, and this 2D mode here. I'm normally switching between horizontal and vertical. The 2D sort of works intelligently to determine which of the two should be used, but I prefer doing it manually, to be honest. If I set this to horizontal mode, it is going to look before and after the selection to determine whether or not the thing that I've selected belongs there. And it's mostly doing this by analyzing amplitude. So if the thing that I selected is louder than things to the left and the right of the selection horizontally, it is going to reduce or attenuate that signal to match the surrounding regions. Likewise, if I set it to vertical mode, it will look above and below my selection to see if the amplitude needs to be attenuated to match above and below. And 2D does sort of an intelligent working of both of these, where it will look to the left and the right and above and below. But again, I just sort of find it faster and more intuitive to use the horizontal and vertical tools myself. It just gives me a bit more control over the process. So now that we understand how these work, our other tools become much easier to understand. So the surrounding region length determines how close and how far from that selection it's looking to make that comparison. So I can expand or contract how far out it's comparing to remove the thing that I want removed. And then last but not least, and this one does come in handy, is the before and after weighting. So if I am in horizontal mode and I expand to the right, you will notice that the dotted white line before my selection goes basically away once I move fully to the right. And the opposite is also true. If I expand all the way to the left, it is going to get rid of the comparison zone on the right, and it will look before my selection. And then this strength is an interesting one. I usually set this very low, like 0.7, 0.8, 0.6. I usually just leave it parked here at 0.7. I find that if you use higher values above 1, it will actually start to attenuate more intensely, and even to the point of just punching a hole through your audio, which we don't often want. So with this setting like this, I'll make my selection, I'll do a horizontal analysis and hit render, and you will see that that bright little nodule that was here just disappeared. So if I go back and then redo, you'll see it appearing and disappearing there. So that worked great. Now the same thing would apply where, like, if I were recording some sound effects, let's say, and I was getting the tail of a gunshot or something, and then some birds started chirping, and I really don't want those birds in my recording, I can select them, do the horizontal analysis, hit render, and those birds are gone. So this tool is super powerful for attenuating things that you don't want. And like I said, what's nice about it is that you don't have to be super precise. And the shortcut for this one is actually Command 6 to render this by default. And you can really clean up some pretty egregious stuff in your recordings. And like if I just wanted a clean ambience recording with no birds in it, like look how quick and easy that is to do. So this is how I use RX for cleaning up my sound effects recordings, as well as the iLog recordings as well. Tip number 2, doing spectral design within iZotope. For those of you who have been around for a while, you may remember a tool from iZotope called Iris, which was a synthesizer that did almost exactly what I'm about to show you. And unfortunately, that synthesizer was discontinued, but you can do much of the same thing in iZotope, albeit not with the convenience of using a synthesizer or a sampler, but it can still be an effective tool. So I'm going to take this recording and send it back into RX. Okay, so here's this recording. Let's take a listen. This is a recording that I did in North Carolina, and you can hear there's some great cicadas and some birds. Now, one thing that you can do is there's this really cool tool down here where there's this play button that has this dotted line around it, and it says play frequency selection. If I click this, it will enable it, and it will only play within the frequencies I have selected and nothing else. So if I select just up here, cicadas. If I select just down here, I get just the birds. This is a really great tool for honing in on exactly what it is that you want to hear. And if you turn the loop on simultaneously, you can also get some pretty cool effects this way. By selecting very specific frequency ranges and shaping the spectral output this way, you can create some pretty fun like UI sounds. So I could take just this, for example, and then I'm going to shorten the selection as it plays, and you'll hear it get faster and faster. Okay, now that's pretty great. And there's actually a very simple way to capture this audio in real time. If I flip back over here to Pro Tools, I have this RX11 monitor. That's the way that I'm monitoring the output of RX. And I could easily just send this to another location and record the output of RX monitor, including the live loop. And it would look something like this. I'll just set one up real quick. I'm going to set the input of this track down here to bus 5 and 6. I'm then going to create a send to bus 5 and 6 right here and send out at Unity. So I'm going to solo and mute this track so that I don't hear a doubling up of it and so that I don't hear this clip up here, although I could just mute it as well, it'd be fine. I will now hit numeric 3 on the Pro Tools keyboard to start that recording. And then let's do this. And now you can see it has recorded that audio right here in Pro Tools. And you can do this with wider frequency selections as well. And basically by playing around with this, you can do this with low frequency content, you can do this with high frequency content, find different sorts of recordings. You can get some really interesting tonalities out of it. Okay, for my third tip and my third tool here, I'm going to be showing you a module within RX called the Deconstruct Module. So let's take a look at it. So I have this recording. This is of a water pump. It's like one of those manual water jugs that you pressurize and then you can spray out of the nozzle. What's interesting about this recording is that you have the transient hits and you have sort of noisy stuff, but you also have this sort of like mid-range sort of looping tonal thing going on. So that's where the Deconstruct module comes in. What Deconstruct does is it separates your audio. It differentiates between tonal content and noisy content and allows you to adjust the ratio of that. And you can get some really interesting results. So if I highlight the audio here and I bring up the Deconstruct module, I can choose between tonal gain and noisy gain. And if I drop this noisy gain like all the way down and hit render, it is going to leave me with what iZotope believes is just tonal content. Now, I had this separate transients enabled here, which means that every time there's a click or a hit, it's going to leave that intact. I probably don't want that, so I'm actually going to turn that off. It is useful to keep on in some instances. I'm going to hit render without it, and now you'll see it's gotten it down much further. I don't have the transients going all the way up to the full bandwidth. So let's listen and see what this sounds like without the noisy gain. Okay, so let's undo that. And then width. Okay, so let's try running it again. I'm actually gonna boost the tonal thing. You can actually, it's one of the interesting things about this tool is you can run it multiple times and it will continue to drill down. Let's try this now. Let's try it one more time. It's an interesting texture. I don't know how useful that would be, but let's try it. I have another example here to do the exact same thing. So let's try this. This is one of those, at-home carbonation soda fizz things. So let's listen to this. It's a pretty great recording. But it is an inherently noisy recording. So let's try to strip this down just to the tonality. I'm going to do it again. And now you can see we've got some pretty interesting patterns going on here. So now this is interesting. This portion right here, I might sort of maybe lower this. I'm going to use my shortcut for clip gain, which I've set a custom shortcut for. And that sounds kind of like an alien UI power-up sort of thing, right? So I like the way that that sounds. What's really cool about this Deconstruct tool is I don't always know what I'm going to get out of it. This is a really fun thing to just experiment with, and sometimes you get some happy accidents. Sometimes it works great, sometimes not so much, but it's a really fun tool to play around with. And just so that you're aware, if you ever want to remove the tonality of something to just be left with the noise profile, it is also very useful to have the ability to reduce the tonal in comparison to the noisy gain as well. It can be used both ways. Fourth tip, using declick in a way you didn't expect. So I'm going to send this next clip into RX. It's a fairly noisy recording, you can see. Now let's take a listen to it. So what's interesting about this is it's just water dripping onto a hollow metal container. I recorded this for a project a long time ago to get that specific tonality. So you have the water splats, and then you have, these resonances from the metal that you can see here. Now, I'm going to use the Declick module in a way that you probably wouldn't expect. One cool thing about most of the modules in RX is they have this output noise only checkbox. If you click this and then you make your selection and you render it, I'm going to put the sensitivity pretty high here. It is only going to output the clicks. Now, if you do this on something that it wasn't necessarily intended for, the clicks that you get left with can be pretty interesting. It's just an interesting tone. You've also got this ability to click widen, which basically means that the duration of the clicks that it's looking for will expand. So if I undo this and render it again, here they have a little bit more sustain to them. If I turn the sensitivity all the way up and bring down the widening just a little bit, let's render it one more time. And let's skew towards the high frequencies. It's taking longer because I put the sensitivity all the way up, so it's really going to look for minuscule clicks. And that can just serve as like an interesting texture that you can use. Now, I'm actually going to steal this SodaStream recording again, and let's run it through that. Let's maybe not set it all the way up to 10. Let's just go to 8. Yeah, so that's more interesting here. So you get this kind of wet, artifacty, kind of over noise reduced sound, but that's what we're looking for, is kind of the weirdness that it can give. So again, I could use like my frequency selection tool. And there I have another sort of UI sound, albeit kind of an alien clicky one. So you can use this for all sorts of stuff. So just be aware that this output clicks only was sort of intended to be able to monitor what it was that you were removing, but when you push it to extremes, you can actually use it as a fun design source, and a lot of the modules have it, so have some fun experimenting with that. And now for the fifth and final tip, overwriting a file with RX to preserve metadata. This is SoundMiner, and I have just loaded into RAM those Toronto recordings that I talked about, and they have not been mastered yet, but let's pretend that they had. So I'm going to rename this Toronto Amazing Ambience. Okay, and then let's pretend this has a wonderful description, and I want to preserve this metadata. I don't want to bring it back into Pro Tools. I've already spent the time mastering it. It's perfect. It's exactly how I want it, except I go back to it at a later date and I realize I accidentally left this tick in. I don't want that. And I also don't want to have to remove it every single time I bring it into a session, right? Like, I just want to be able to import this file and it has 0 issues, and I never want to have to deal with that click again. But I don't want to redo all the metadata either. What do I do? Well, I'll go find where that file lives in Finder. SoundMiner happens to have a function for this, where if you hit Command R on a file, it will reveal where that file lives. And so if I toggle back to RX here, I can click and drag this file in. And now I can find that click that I wanted to get rid of earlier. I can make my selection. I can bring my Deconstruct module back and hit render. It will get rid of that click. Make my selection down here and just quickly clip gain down that little thump down there. And now the click is taken care of and I don't ever have to worry about it again. Now if I hit Command Option S, it will overwrite that file. It's not going to save a new copy. It will actually replace it. It will do a destructive edit to that file and it will now be permanently changed. But it will not destroy the metadata associated with it, which is awesome. The nice thing about a program like SoundMiner 2 is that all I have to do is click away from it and then click back to it, and it will basically recalculate the waveform and the tick will be gone from the waveform as well. You can also go to File in the menu bar, and it's just a few down from Save As. Screenshot of this since it's outside of my screen recording. But again, the shortcut for that is Command Option S. It will overwrite that file for you. Now, one thing to note here, unfortunately, this only works for lossless audio like WAV and AIFF. It will not work for FLAC. So if you're like me and you have converted your whole library to FLAC, which is a whole separate discussion, unfortunately, it will not work because of some stability issues with metadata surrounding those file types. If you happen to be working with WAV files, you're in luck. And that's basically it. I really hope that you can see that iZotope RX is an extremely powerful set of tools, and it can be used in all kinds of ways, from practical audio repair to really inventive and creative sound design. It's one of those tools that I included in my Desert Island plugins video, which you can watch here, because it's so versatile in its ability to both correct and alter audio. Whether it's noise reduction or creative sound design applications, this is not a software I would ever want to let go of anytime soon. It's just incredibly powerful, and I think it's absolutely worth checking out and exploring if you haven't. And if you do have these tools already, be sure to check out some of the functions that I mentioned here for some fun results. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you're interested in checking out the tools from iZotope, I'll leave a link down in the description. There's varying price tiers for RX and the sort of features that you get with it, so be sure to check those out. If you have not already in this new year, I would be extremely grateful to you if you would subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment down below if you think that there is a fun way that you use iZotope that I should have included. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next one.